For the last 3 years, I haven't really been making food and travel content. I've been very disconnected from the world that I was once a part of. So what have I been doing? Since June of 2020, I've spent a whole lot of time trying to understand myself and trying to heal. It's been a very messy process. It most definitely has been. But at the same time, it's also been very beautiful.
A big part of this process of disconnection was in leaving everything and everyone I knew and in moving to Lisbon, which is just such a fantastic city to be in. It's like walking around an art gallery with either old and gorgeous architecture or bright and colorful apartments, a wide range of stunning beaches that are easy to get to, all while being the sunniest capital city in Europe. It feels really good to be here, and the world is starting to know it. Lisbon has a rapidly growing expat community, and many of them fall under a category that I call the refugees of capitalism. People that have worked hard for major companies in major cities, earned a lot of money, but then realized that the work came at the cost of their health and sanity. So they left their jobs, their families, and their friends, sold all their stuff, and then came to Portugal to find themselves and to heal. And for many, the healing process isn't just in Lisbon. Much of it happens here in the magic misty woods of Sintra. For many, to find themselves, they need to lose themselves in the woods. Every time I go to Sintra, I find some manifestation of an idea that helps me come to terms with whatever I'm going through at the time. When I'm climbing a hill, I feel an appreciation that I can still do this. I still have it in me. There will be a time that I'll be too old to do so. There will be a time that I'll get over the hill, and what then? Where do I go from there?
I definitely feel a connection to these old ruins. Look at what was built here once, long ago. The color this once had is now all faded. It's crumbling and cracking and falling apart, and you could see nature coming to overtake it and bring it back to where it once was. I imagine how many people used to join here and what communities once gathered. Yeah, I definitely imagine that this place brought a lot of joy to some people. And now people just come by to look at the ruins, the archives of a time now past. Nothing we build will ever last, no matter how big or how much effort we put into it. All things fall apart in the end, don't they? That they do. That they do.
I love grabbing a good walking stick, and I look at the stick and I remember that it was a part of and Fudgy loves grabbing my stick, and there go my thoughts on the circle of life. Fudgy doesn't give a shit about the circle of life. Fudgy just lives it. What does he give a shit about apart from just food and ball and stick? What does he feel on these hikes? Is it all excitement and smells and animals to chase and people's meaningful sticks to chomp? Are there moments of wonder and awe when he sees something beautiful and can just sit with it? I've spent the past 3 years since COVID focusing on healing and personal development. When I went to therapy, my therapist and I looked at some of the stories that I was telling about myself and the beliefs I had about who I was and how the world operated. And then we worked on examining those stories and essentially releasing their hold on me. I had a lot of stories that I was telling myself that weren't really aligned with my experience. I strongly identified as a husband for a big part of my life until that story fell apart in a spectacular fashion. Right? Afterwards, I strongly related to the story that I was broken and unlovable. And luckily, I was able to break the spell of that story as well, along with other stories that weren't really serving me. Stories about my masculinity, stories about my sexuality, stories about my relationship to my family, to my community, to the country that I lived in. All of this was very healing for me and alleviated a lot of anxiety and suffering. And I fucking love the whole process of doing it, of examining the thoughts and patterns that were arising in me and looking at them with curiosity and compassion, figuring out where they came from, examining what actions are trying to enable in me, and in doing so, undoing their spell and letting them go.
Why undo just some stories? Why not undo all stories? Forget about stories of marriage. My whole ideas of monogamy dissolved into polyamory and even into relationship anarchy. I dissolved my ideas of identity, and not just white male identity or Polish Canadian identity, but into any identity, into ego dissolution, into the Advaita Vedanta, and into Dzogchen teaching. I gave up on my ideas of having a free will and consciousness is all a controlled hallucination, and space-time as it is. It's an interface that hides reality, and even emotions aren't even real. And I did a whole video series on that. And that just did so well, didn't it? Yeah, that was truly my best work. Good choice there, Simon. Bravo for you.
It's a beautiful practice, and it's so addictive. I got into it, and then I got really into it. I definitely went too far, and now I'm lost in the woods, and I've got no connection.
I think that in telling myself that all stories are false, then I'm negating a lot of people's experiences. I could definitely see that as a sense of ego arising in me, a sense of defensiveness and self-protection coming up. And I definitely hurt my connection with others with this kind of thinking. Definitely with the people closest to me, and with just the world as a whole. Amen, brother.
I was trapped in the framework of black and white reasoning, and I got a bit extreme. If all stories are made up, then all can fall apart if you look closely enough at them. Then that means that they must all be false, and that there's some other, deeper, higher, something kind of truth to discover. But what if that's not the case? What if all stories are neither true, nor are they false? It's not either or, but and both. It's not binary, but quantum. It's fluid. It's a spectrum. And, like broad spectrum antibiotics, spirituality, healing, and meditation don't just remove the bad stuff. They get rid of the good stuff too. Some of it can undo the painful parts. Too much of it will undo the good parts too. There's a middle path between the two ends. Instead of trying to dismiss all stories, what I hope to do now is to hold enough space so that I could honor the truths that all sides can bring. Instead of falling into a postmodern void, how can I connect with the stories of others?
It's time to get back to the real world. I've got mouths to feed. Up. Queijadas. I bought these like a few days ago. And they've just been sitting in my fridge, staring at me, waiting for me to film this video. Oh, yes. And these are my favorite queijadas that I've ever had. Now, this little pastry here might remind you of what Portugal is really well known for, the pastel de natas. They're custard tarts. These are very different. Are you ready? Five simple ingredients in here: sugar, cheese, eggs, flour, and cinnamon. The way that they do it is probably a lot more complicated, but 5 ingredients is all you need to make this delicious, delicious pastry. It has this kind of like water cracker kind of crust to it. I love how you crunch into it and it doesn't crumble and leave dust. You ever have those pastries you bite into and it's so dry that it hits the back of your throat and you cough? Not with this. This is really well done. What's great about this one here is that it still has an eggy taste. It still has a very savory taste at the back with a hint of cinnamon and not being too sweet at all. So it's got a very good crunch when you bite into it. It doesn't crumble and fall apart like a pastel de nata sometimes does. Then it has a very soft and fluffy inside. So you get the change of texture from crunchy to soft in this delicious, delicious pastry. Honestly, I could finish a whole tray of these while I could probably only go for like 1 pastel de nata at a time. How many of these can I eat on camera? I already finished 3. But for now, see you next time. Fuck, how many more of these can I eat? Your stomach's starting to hurt. I feel sleepy. Okay, I think we are finished. Video 1 over.